Iroh's wife and Liu Tin's mother. She's never really discussed throughout the entire series. Why? Hey everyone, welcome back to the Geek Talk. Today, let's discuss the idea of what might have happened to Iroh's wife and Liu Tin's mother. Now, there are a few theories that are floating out there in the fan base that I kind of want to go over. Topics that range from the idea of this mysterious wife dying due to childbirth, or there being some sort of divorce or separation, even some stuff that deals with the spirit world and all of that. But I want to talk about each of them and kind of decide what makes the most sense to me and what happened to this character, this very mysterious character that isn't mentioned all that often in the series, although we would think, play a vital role into Iroh's life. So first off, just in terms of what we know about Iroh himself, in the series, the Last Airbender series, we can tell that he's definitely probably a single individual. At the time of the show, he is no longer married, as far as we can tell, especially when he's interacting with Aunt Wu, who's kind of making eyes at him, and his little interaction with June. I think the wife is out of the picture at this point, but the thing is that we don't know exactly why that's the case. So the most widely, kind of coveted theory out there is that this woman, whoever she is, we can give her a fake name. Let's call her Yuna. Let's call her Yuna because that's what I want to say. Some people think that Yuna actually died at childbirth when she was rearing Liu Tin, and that could play a factor into why Iroh was so close to Liu Tin, because he lost his wife and the only loved one that he had left over was his son himself, so that when his son eventually does die at Ba Sing Se, that was a huge impact for him, because not only his wife Yuna died, but also his son, and that led him on to the reassessment of who he was as a person, his spirituality walk, and all of that. The only issue I have with the childbirth death is the fact that we don't really get any indication of this Yuna character. And if she really did die at childbirth, when we saw Iroh, being sad for Liu Tin during the Tales of Ba Sing Se, we should have saw some sort of indication of maybe a tombstone or some sort of keepsake with the wife. So for me, I think that something else comes of this, but we'll talk about some of the other theories before I talk about my final theory. So another idea is that they simply divorced or separated before the death of Liu Tin. And the idea of this one is that because Iroh wasn't a very good person, before he became the Iroh that we all know and love, he was similar to Ozai and everybody else who was in that family line. And it could be that she was put in an arranged marriage and just didn't want to be in it anymore. And similar to what Ursa did with Ozai and leaving him, she did the same thing to Iroh, which could have been a catalyst to him reassessing himself. So that'd been another catalyst, possibly. That's another theory that could possibly go. Another one that seems to be a little bit outlandish to me, but is interesting no less, is the idea of Ko playing a factor into the relationship, and that the reason why, as we know, Iroh is extremely spiritual, he can see spirits even in the mortal realm, he actually ascended to become a spirit himself in the spirit realm, as we saw in Legend of Korra. But how did this start? How did he get this affiliation with the spirits? Why did he know the spirit world so well? Some people are thinking that this could have been because of Ko the Face Stealer, that he could have stolen Iroh's wife's face, similar to what happened to Karuk in his, Avatar storyline. But I don't think this is really the case, because it seems really weird. It's something that I think we would have known about in the story, it's something that would have happened. And also, I don't think that they would retread on that storyline that they've already done for another character, and it being so similar that it's a wife that's face who's being lost, and then the vengeance of wanting to go into the spirit world. That one isn't very viable to me, but I thought it was interesting to at least make a note of that, because it does lend an explanation for why Iroh is so spiritual, why he's so integrated with the spirit world, and the idea that he was able to enter it just on pure determination of seeking out his wife's face could make some sort of sense. It is an explanation, but I don't know if it is the best explanation. Now, the idea of the childbirth stuff, I don't necessarily agree with because of the age of Zuko and Azula as they are to Liu Tin. When Liu Tin died, he would have been around 16 to 22 years old, kind of that young adult age of when you're, able to viably go to war. And at that time, I believe Zuko and Azula were 8 and 9, maybe 9 and 10 at that time, around that age group. So that would mean that around 10 years difference between Liu Tin and his cousins. And if that's the case, and Iroh's wife did die in childbirth, then it wouldn't make sense for the storyline of Ursa being paired off to Ozai, especially when it was discovered that Ursa was the descendant of Roku, and of course the heir to the throne is always the oldest son. So if it was true that Lu Ten's mother died at childbirth, then Ursa should have been a viable candidate to Iroh, but she was not. So that lends me to believe that Iroh's wife was still alive during that whole conundrum of who Ursa should marry between Ozai and Iroh, because if Iroh had the availability to take her on as a wife, because I believe in this society, I don't think anything contradicts this. I think they are a single marriage, or sorry, a single, how can I describe this? They're not polygamous. There's no polygamy in this world. So they only have one partner at a time. In this culture. So if that's the case, then no, childbirth probably is not the most likely situation. So for me, I think just based on that, there was a separation that happened between the birth of Lu Ten and the death of Lu Ten. And I think that it was a separation of it being possibly a loveless marriage. It was an arranged marriage, and it could have just been the case of Iroh, who we were saying before, wasn't, probably the best person back in that time, or they had disputes or disagreements, and that just led to a separation, whether this wife, went into hiding similar to what Ursa did or whatever she did. I think it's more likely that a separation occurred. And the fact that I think that Iroh has bad blood with this Yuna character. And the reason I think that is because, again, when we see that death site for Lu Ten, we don't see any keepsakes for this Yuna character. We don't see any keepsakes from Iroh's wife. It doesn't even make sense if she died at childbirth, because Iroh isn't that jacked up of a person at this point in time in his life. So if she did die at childbirth, you would think there would be some sort of remembrance of her along with her son Lu Ten. But because I think she's still alive and there's that still bad blood with them, it makes the most sense in all of this fitting together. I think that's the thing that makes the most sense between what's going on with Iroh and his potential past lover. But this also opens up another thread, and that's the fact that this woman, this Yuna character, could still be alive today in the world of The Last Airbender. And if that's the case, there might be a future storyline that could come from that, because we really honestly have not seen Iroh. And this is weird because oftentimes we see Iroh, tackling his any adversity he reaches in life head on. So it's weird for him not to talk about this person, whether she died at childbirth or whether they separated, whatever the case. There has to be a huge reason for why Iroh has never spoken about this woman ever, period. And the only way that I can think about it is the idea of there being bad blood. But I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think is happening with Iroh and his potential ex-wife, his current wife? Do you think she died at childbirth, as a lot of the fandom does? Do you believe that there was a separation that happened between them? Do you think this the face stealer thing is a viable option and leads into Iroh's spirituality? Let me know in the comments below, or you can watch more of my videos here right next to my face. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.